Hey BookTube, let's talk about audiobooks.
I got my ticket for the long way round.
This is part 2 in a series I'm doing on audiobooks, and this time I want to talk about narrators. Narrators are so key to an audiobook. They are what makes or breaks an audiobook, pretty much, yeah, like duh. Of course they are. They can take a book that is just meh, and they can turn it into something amazing. And I say that because there have been a lot of books that I've read or I've listened to on audio, and people who've read them in print have said, oh, the book was okay. And I have said, that book was so amazing. Well, you know, a narrator makes the difference. Now, I want to explain this to you, and I also want to play several clips of audiobooks that will illustrate what I'm talking about. But the first thing I want to tell you is that there's a big difference between being read a story and being told a story. The narrator needs to have some investment in the story in order to make it come alive for you. If they're just reading to you, they're wasting your time. They really are, and they're wasting their own time, because there is nothing worse than sitting and listening to someone read with zero expression, zero emotion, and they could care less. For example, think about when you were a little kid and your teacher in school or your parents would read you a book, and if they said something like, and then the big bad wolf said, boo. Do you remember being a little kid and being so wrapped up in the story that when they said, and then the big bad wolf said, boo, and you jumped and hit the ceiling? That's the difference. There's the difference between someone who reads you the story and someone who narrates it, who tells you the story. You know, when a book is written in first person, I often tend to identify with the character who's talking, and so when things happen to the character, I feel like they're happening to me, and that's because they're telling me what has happened to them. So it's sort of like a good friend sitting there and telling you, but it's almost like you're so involved in the story that you feel like it's happening to you too. Now, there are a lot of examples that I want to give you, starting with the fact that when someone narrates a story, it's different than reading it. And to do that, I'm going to read you a section from Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. Now, in this section, Kath and Levi, Kath is the main character, and Levi is the love interest. They've just had a big fight, and so they're discussing why he can't study for a test, and he is afraid he's going to flunk the test. So I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to play Rebecca Lowman narrating this, and so you can see the difference. Kath walked in, and Levi followed. He was smiling again, but he was still obviously operating at 30 degrees below regular Levi. They might be done fighting, but he was still going to fail his test. So you couldn't find the movie? She asked. Even online? No, and the movie's no good anyway. Teachers can always tell when you watch the movie. He flopped down at the head of her bed. Normally, I listen to the audiobook. That counts as reading, Kath said, sitting at her desk. It does? Of course. He kicked one of the legs of her chair playfully and then rested his feet there on the rail. Well then, never mind. I guess I have read lots of books. This one wasn't available. Now, I want you to listen to Rebecca Lowman narrate that same passage that I just read.
Kath walked in and Levi followed. He was smiling again, but he was still obviously operating at 30 degrees below regular Levi. They might be done fighting, but he was still going to fail his test. So you couldn't find the movie? She asked. Even online? No, and the movie's no good anyway. Teachers can always tell when you watch the movie. He flopped down at the head of her bed. Normally, I listen to the audiobook. That counts as reading, Kath said, sitting at her desk. It does? Of course. He kicked one of the legs of her chair playfully, then rested his feet there on the rail. Well, then never mind. I guess I have read lots of books. This one wasn't available.
One of the books I listened to recently was Retribution Falls by Chris Wooding. This is book 1 in the Tales of the Ketty J, and this is a book all about adventure and space pirates. It's a fantasy, it's adult fantasy, and it's set in a world that's kind of steampunk crazy, and there are a lot of characters. This was narrated on audio by Rupert Degas, and the man is amazing. He is spectacular. And I can't believe what he did with these characters. And the reason I want you to listen to a section of this book is simply because one of the ways that he distinguished the characters was to give them different accents. And he brought them to life with these accents. He just made it so easy. You always knew who was talking. Here, let me show you what I mean.
"What happened to your last navigator?" she asked.
"Found out he'd been selling off spare engine parts on the side. He navigated himself out the cargo door with the captain's toe up his ass. Ha ha!"
"What does it matter?" Frey replied. "The past is the past, it's gone." "It's not gone," she said. "It never goes." She turned away from the window and faced him across her desk. "I wish I had your talent, Darian. I wish I could walk away from something or someone and it would be as if they never existed, to lock a piece of my life away in a trunk, never to be opened."
"Darian Frey!"
McCard called from his hiding place behind a stack of aircraft tires.
"You're a dead man!"
"Threats," Frey murmured. "Honestly, what's the point?" "They're trying to flank us," said Jez. She fired at one of the smugglers who was scampering from behind a pile of broken hydraulic parts. The bullet cut through the sleeve of his shirt, missing him by a hair. He froze mid-scamper and fled back into hiding. "Cheap kind of tactic, if you ask me," Craig commented, having recovered sufficient breath for a spot of nervous bravado. He knocked the shells from the drum of his revolver and slotted 5 new ones in. The kind of sloppy, unoriginal thinking you come to expect from these mid-level smuggler types.
Like I said, sometimes you read a book and you don't like it, but then I've listened to it and I think it's amazing. One prime example of that is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. There have been a lot of people who have read this book and they don't like it. It puts them off because some words are misspelled, the main character is not very well educated, and there are times when the print changes to a different font face so that Ness can communicate a different idea. Well, it all changes when it's on audio. So I want to show you some segments in the book where that happens, and then I want you to listen to what Nick Podehl was able to do with the narration. This is a prime example of what I'm talking about. This is what it looks like in print. And what's happening here in the story is that everybody can hear everybody else's thoughts. And so when you walk into a town where there are a lot of people, this is kind of what happens. Well, this is a good way in print to get that across. But the difference is on audio, it sounds like this.
Here's what it's like. Here's what every minute of every day of my stupid, stinking life in this stupid, stinking town is like. Never mind plugging your ears. It don't help at all.
Point, Justin. Master, not a whip killing. Discipline. And just shut up for my family. You not whip tie your hands. In God's order, I am Bruce. Master, beautiful. Killian. Single circular. Let's go mark these together. Oh my Lord.
I says,
Single circular. And you shut up! Shut it up!
Now here's an example of what I was talking about when I talk about the font being different. Now this is a squirrel yelling at the boy in the story, who's Todd, and to his dog. Well, listen to what Nick Podehl did with that whole section.
I have to kick my way through the grass, getting grublets stuck to my shoes. One smashes as I kick it off, leaving a green smear across my sneakers, which I know from experience ain't coming out. "Manchi!" I rage. "Squirrel! Squirrel! Squirrel!" He's barking round the tree, and the squirrel's skittering back and forth on the tree trunk, taunting him. "Come on, whirler dog," says its noise. "Come on, come get. Come on, come get. Whirler, whirler, whirler. Squirrel, Todd, squirrel." Goddamn animals are stupid.
So that's part 2 of my audiobook series. Narrators. I'm going to list some of my favorites down below, and I will link them to audible.com, where they will give you a list of their books and you can click on and hear a sample of the way that they narrate. You might find a book you really like. You never know. I'll be back with part 3, and I'll talk then about where I get my audiobooks. So till then, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
When I'm gone, you're gonna miss me when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me by my walk. You're gonna miss me by my talk. Oh, you're gonna miss me when I'm gone.